We're getting these incredible new ways to see inside our own bodies. Today, we're going to look through two of them. One, well, it's probably on your wrist right now. The other, it's hidden in plain sight, right inside your eye.
All right, before we dive in, let's start with a big question. What if your body had its own check engine light? I mean, really, how can technology help us get ahead of the game, stop reacting to health problems after they pop up, and actually prevent them from happening at all? So that's what this is all about. We're going to compare two totally different windows into our vascular health. On one hand, you've got what we can call the everyday window, that continuous monitoring right there on your wrist. And on the other hand, the precision window. This is an incredibly sharp, high-def diagnostic view we can get through your eye. Okay, let's kick things off with something a lot of us already know, maybe even own, the watch on your wrist. We're going to talk about the big promise it holds for a whole new era of preventative health.
So why is this so important? Well, look at this number. 18 million people. That's how many people die from cardiovascular diseases every single year. It's a massive, staggering problem, and that's exactly what these new technologies are trying to solve.
Right, so the big idea, the dream really, is that your smartwatch becomes this little guardian on your wrist. It's constantly tracking your heart rate, feeding that data to some really smart AI, and the goal is to spot tiny signs of trouble, like atrial fibrillation, way before you would ever feel a thing. It's a total game changer, shifting from being reactive to being proactive.
But, and there's always a but, right? There's a huge gap between a cool idea in a lab and a tool that actually works reliably out in the real world, in the messiness of our actual lives.
So, a big review found some major hurdles. First, you've got motion artifacts. That's a fancy way of saying just moving around, doing your thing can totally mess up the data. Then there's battery life. It's a constant headache, right? It dies, you get gaps in the data, and let's be honest, people just forget to wear it or charge it. Throw in flaky Bluetooth and delays in getting the data analyzed, and suddenly that clear window we were hoping for, it gets pretty foggy. Sometimes it feels downright cracked.
And this is the key takeaway from the researchers. They're saying, hey, there's a significant gap here. Most of the validation, the testing, it's not happening in real-world settings. It doesn't account for that daily chaos. And that's a huge problem for knowing if we can truly rely on this data.
Okay, so let's completely switch gears now. Let's move away from the wrist and look at a totally different approach, one that opens up a new, surprisingly clear window into our health, and it's through the human eye.
This is pretty amazing, actually. The retina, that part at the very back of your eye, it's not just for seeing. It's a literal extension of your brain and central nervous system. It's the only place in your entire body where doctors can look directly, non-invasively, at the blood vessels of your brain. It's a true window.
And because we can see in, scientists can measure this crucial process called neurovascular coupling, or NVC for short. Basically, it's how your brain gets more blood when it needs it. They flash a little light in your eye and watch how the blood vessels react. And here's the kicker. When this system starts to go wrong, it's one of the very first signs of diseases like Alzheimer's and stroke.
Now the problem has always been seeing this with enough detail. The old methods were just too blurry, you couldn't tell what was what. But this new imaging technique, AORSO, it is an absolute game changer. We're talking ultra-high resolution in both space and time. It lets us see these tiny microscopic changes with just unbelievable precision. We've never been able to see this before.
So, what does this new level of precision actually get us? Well, this is where it gets really cool. For the first time, we can finally see the real signal hiding in all that biological noise. Check this out. Researchers can now clearly separate two different things happening. You see, on its own, an artery has this tiny natural pulse. That's the baseline, about a 1.2% change. But then you hit it with that flicker of light and bam, the neurovascular coupling kicks in and you get a much bigger dilation, over 5%. They can finally tell the difference.
And what's amazing is they can map out this whole dynamic three-phase reaction, something that was totally invisible before. It's this beautiful, precise sequence. First, a really fast initial opening. Then, a slower, sustained opening while the light is still on. And finally, a controlled return to normal. It's like a signature, a fingerprint of a healthy vascular system at work.
This incredible precision is also uncovering all these fascinating new details. Like, it turns out the smaller arteries actually have a bigger reaction, relatively speaking. And veins, they behave totally differently than arteries, much slower, more gradual.
These aren't just fun facts. These are the kinds of subtle details that could become critical biomarkers for disease down the road. Okay, so let's bring it all back together. We've got these two very different windows into our health. The sometimes foggy window on our wrist and this new crystal clear magnifying glass in our eye. How do they fit together? What does this mean for the future?
Well, the thing is, it's not an either-or situation. We're not choosing one over the other. Think of it like this. Your smartwatch is that always-on, everyday monitor. Yeah, the window can get a little foggy sometimes, but it's great for spotting big-picture trends. The retinal imager, on the other hand, is like a powerful magnifying glass. You don't use it 24/7, but when you need to zoom in and get a precise, high-definition diagnostic look, it's the perfect tool for the job.
So the big takeaway here is that these tools work together. They're complementary. You can imagine a future where your watch is your 24/7 early warning system, just keeping an eye on things. And if it spots some kind of subtle, worrying trend over a few weeks or months, that's when it triggers an alert. It says, hey, it's time to go get a high-definition look with a tool like the retinal imager to really see what's going on.
This combination, this pairing of broad, continuous monitoring with these super precise snapshots, it really does promise a revolution in preventative health. But it also brings us right back to where we started. When the check engine light for our own bodies is no longer just a metaphor, the real question becomes, how will we choose to drive?